This is coming to you live from the Mazard family bedroom. And as soon as we had the idea to just turn on the camera and start live streaming from bed, Melissa joked, "I guess this is the first time we've made a YouTube video in the bedroom." And immediately I said, "Oh no, it's not." And both of us could think of examples. Now, the earliest one I can remember, I said, "You remember the video that Joe Best was so offended by?" I don't even remember the topic. There was a video we filmed, both of us in bathrobes, in white bathrobes, in bed, in a hotel room. That was in Beijing, China. Hotel room in Beijing, China. I think that was the first bedroom video. Oh, but of course, the whole golden age of my YouTube channel in Kunming, my bed was in the background for half of those videos. I did hundreds of videos, I think, with the bed. So that was in a bedroom in front of a bed. And whenever the bed sheets were wrinkled up, I get comments from people like, "I can tell you've been putting work in that bed." Like, no, like I've been sleeping. That's all I've been doing in that bed. But yeah, actually, but quite a few different videos over the history of the channel. When you made thousands of videos, it's hard to remember them all. And I remembered, oh no, we did one Game of Thrones video talking about Game of Thrones with the both of us in bed, so on and so forth. Anyway, there's this really interesting comment from a member of the audience. This is from a supporter on Patreon who just uses the initials JMJ. Now, I only remember talking to this viewer within the last few weeks, but this is evidently someone who's watched the channel for many years. And this draws out, I mean, look, part of what he's saying here is true. And it's just interesting because it's true. And then partly, I think it's kind of misleading and wrong. And that's worth talking about or reflecting on also. But it's certainly a kind of stimulating and interesting observation that he's offering in response to my recent kind of 1 hour in-depth video, which is titled "Megan Phelps Roper is Wrong About Everything." Now, if you don't know who Megan Phelps Roper is, you'd have no idea what that video is about. And also, the title, it's kind of the opposite of clickbait. It does tell you the topic of the video, but it doesn't really give you a sense of how profound and in-depth the discussion is, what that video gets into. So I think that video, the video that he's responding to, and then I'm going to respond to this comment from the audience. I think it is genuinely one of the most profound videos on the channel, and also one of the videos of the most pragmatic value because it's talking about philosophy, but it's talking about philosophy in a way that's applied to your life and how you communicate with your own parents, how you communicate with your own friends, your own brothers and sisters, that kind of thing, how you create conflicts, how you manage conflicts once you've got them, so on and so forth. And if you care about politics, if you care about taking life seriously, as I'm saying here, then you're going to be someone who has a lot of conflicts in your life. So I'm going to read his comment. I'm going to reply to it, but I'm going to hint at what I'm really getting at in this video by just saying I don't think we get to choose as individuals whether or not we have conflicts in our life. We get to choose if we're going to have meaningful conflicts or meaningless ones. So JMJ writes in as follows, quote, "I watched this TED Talk along with several of her interviews. Her points seem to make sense." So he's saying that the points made by Megan Phelps Roper, they seemed to make sense to him at the time. "You totally challenged her strategy, and I need to rewatch your video to better grasp it. What your video does for me is that it finally explains your years of conflict creating with other YouTubers. I remember you calling Ryan from Happy Healthy Vegan a piece of shit, and it left me slightly horrified. I thought to myself, quote, can't this guy just get along with others? Close quote. So he's been watching the channel for years. I don't know how many years ago that was, 5 years ago or something. Uh, I was enjoying your videos, but such conflicts/drama made me uncomfortable and left me hoping it would be the last conflict and that peace would ensue when all the vegan YouTubers would be making collabs with each other, would support and promote each other, etc. But then there would be conflicts with Mod Vegan, Vegan Gains, and over the years, numerous non-vegans as well. Now I can see it's a conscious strategy on your part to challenge people's beliefs, to get them out of their comfort zone, to perhaps make them change their minds by escalating a conflict. It also shows you got a strong personality and are used to confrontations. I guess it's fair to say that wherever you go, you find imperfections, things to be improved, and you try to change things, by creating/participating in a conflict. You aren't the meek type of person to compromise and just pretend to get along. So it's a lifetime of disagreement and conflict for you. Right. Now, both Melissa and I had a lot to say about this the moment I just read it out loud to her in bed as we were lying down and going to sleep. And then, as described, I decided to get the camera set up and live stream this commentary, this reaction. The first thing I disagree with here. Now, again, obviously, part of what he's saying is right. Partly, it's interesting for me because that was not on my mind at all when I was recording the earlier video. I was not thinking about or reflecting on my experience in those kinds of conflicts with other vegan YouTubers or with non-vegan YouTubers at all. Um, so it wasn't something I was implicitly thinking about or talking about. And also, of course, it wasn't what I was explicitly presenting an argument about. But I do think in broad brushstrokes, he's right that this video, in case you don't understand my modus operandi here, if you don't understand what it is I'm doing, how I engage with ideas, how I engage with political conflicts, and how I confront other YouTubers, but also mainstream political leaders. How I confront Bernie Sanders. Anyway, just say it goes far beyond the way I address my commentary to my fellow vegans, how I address Kevin Smith. And for the record, I asked Kevin Smith if he would officiate at our wedding because he does officiate weddings. I wrote to Kevin Smith and said, look, you're vegan, we're vegan. You're an atheist, we're atheists. You're a YouTuber, I'm a YouTuber. Okay, why don't you officiate at our wedding when we get married, presumably in LA? I don't know if we'll be in Los Angeles or where we're going to be, but we're going to get married somewhere. Okay, we can have a catered vegan event. Melissa and I and Kevin Smith. If you don't know who Kevin Smith is, don't bother Googling it. It's not important. But I joked to Melissa, I was like, well, it's possible he'll get back in touch with us to officiate the wedding because he does like to officiate weddings. And as mentioned, he's vegan, I'm vegan. But it's also possible he remembers my videos criticizing him because Kevin Smith does Google his own name. I think he watches every single YouTube video, every single podcast about him. And it's been shown. He makes fun of himself. He seems to read every Twitter comment, like really obscure, criticism. He seems to seek out and respond to. And he even does mind the comment section on his own channel on YouTube. Like, yeah. So I was like, well, it's possible that my harsh, honest criticism of Kevin Smith will he might refuse to officiate our wedding. And who knows, maybe worse. Maybe he'll gate crash our wedding. Maybe he'll actually try to sabotage our wedding. I don't know. He doesn't seem like the vengeful type. But anyway, yeah. So, some of you might be expecting me to just agree with this. And again, partly, I think, oh, wow, what an interesting kind of observation to take this analysis I did, was talking about, conflicts with your parents, with your brothers, with your sisters, with your coworkers, with friends, with people you care about, maybe with your university professors, and talking about the way in which politics on the most intimate scale of those direct personal relationships, how it does and doesn't relate to the grandiose scale of the fate of nations, shall we say. That was really what was on my mind in that video. To look at that and then say, oh, you can use this as an analysis of what's been happening in the last 5 years, or the last 8 years on the à-bas-le-ciel YouTube channel. Now, this is the first thing I react to kind of negatively, where I say, "Oh no, this is off base, so you don't quite get it." Obviously, this guy has the best of intentions. I'm not ascribing bad intentions, but he's partly right and he's partly wrong. Where he says, "quote I guess it's fair to say that wherever you go, you find imperfections, comma things to be improved, and you try to change things by creating or participating in a conflict." Period. Now, that makes me think of somebody who works in architecture or interior decor, kind of walking around looking at the brickwork. Looking at the ceiling, looking at looking at the paintings. Well, this could be improved. Well, the drapes don't really match the carpet. No pun intended. You know what I mean? Like to be walking around finding fault with the furniture. This table, it just doesn't go with. This is the image that comes to my mind when I think of somebody who finds imperfections everywhere. And by the way, I mean, it was partly his job, but my father was a little bit like that. My father could walk around a museum and he could notice the problems with the lighting, you know, very technical things that the lighting is not correct. Um, you know, okay, so, this is a certain kind of personality. That's not who I am at all, like neither on camera nor off camera. And it's certainly not what I do as a creative artist, as a filmmaker, as a YouTuber, as a broadcaster, as a kind of radio talk show host. I mean, my role resembles each of these things to some extent. Um, when I see a self-professed science channel like Unnatural Vegan, someone who identifies as doing a science education show, as being an advocate for science and rationality. I see a science YouTuber promoting the notion that you can and should take antidepressants during pregnancy. So this is someone who in the past made YouTube videos talking about the health effects of NutraSweet and Splenda, artificial sweeteners. This is someone who apparently, allegedly or ostensibly, did the research and then presents you with the hard-hitting facts about the science behind nutrition, organic farming, and different kinds of sugar substitutes. That's how she identifies. That's how she presents herself. Now, anyone in this audience could throw in an avalanche of sarcastic comments. Well, yeah, that's a small percentage of what she does. Here's who she really is and who she really is. Okay, but that is ostensibly, if not actually, who she is on YouTube. And she's saying it's fine. For one thing, she's saying it's fine to take antidepressants, period. Then she's saying it's fine to take antidepressants during pregnancy. That's not an imperfection I'm finding. I'm not walking around a palace and finding cracks in the cement and saying that the drapes don't match the carpet or the style of the furniture doesn't match the pool. It's like, no, okay? There's a really clear fissure here between right and wrong, good and evil. And in her own idiom, because she's a consequentialist, this has consequences. This is going to harm people. This is going to make the world a worse place, and it's going to directly impact people's lives, right? This is not, now again, sorry, I'm not offended by it, but when he describes me as a person who is creating conflict or participating in conflict, and that it's a life of disagreement, for me, of finding fault, whatever. So did I create that conflict? You know what I'm saying? Like sincerely, like I'm really asking the question. Like how do you describe my role in that? I'm telling the truth, and it's not trivial, and I'm not finding fault, and it's not an imperfection, and I'm not even saying you can improve. She can't. There's no possibility of her trying to improve. I'm trying to save people's lives, and I'm really trying to challenge the ethical compromises that define the culture and society and the epoch that I live in. And I'm saying to people again, don't compromise. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to others. Don't live a lie. There's a price. And yeah, sure, in the most extreme cases, the price is the difference between life and death. But more often, it's going to be a loss of your personal integrity. Right? It's going to be a life without integrity being contrasted to a life that does have integrity. Now, this is not the only example. There are myriad throughout the whole history of the YouTube channel. A conflict that I created, you can put it this way, is that there was at the time a well-known and successful fitness YouTuber, a guy who talked about weight loss and muscle gain. He was a male bodybuilder. And the vast majority of people who watched his channel had no idea about his connection to neo-Nazi ideology, had no idea about his connection to racism and far-right ideology. And he was friends with, based on what I was told, both by him and by Richard, he was friends with Vegan Gains, aka Richard, despite the fact that he was an overt racist white supremacist in this way. And I put together the videos that demolish his reputation. And I think it's fair to say they ended his career. I've heard that back from many different people from many different quarters. And Richard continued to support him and continued to promote him even after he was outed in this way. Now, again, so this is not something, if any of you haven't seen those videos, you can go back and watch them. But I mean, the details are not so relevant here. This is not something small. This is not subtle. This is not finding a crack or fissure. It's what can I say? All I had to do was use quotations of this guy, put them together in a video. People requested that he then deleted all these videos from his own channels, plural, and actually got requests to put it up unedited, to have them speaking as owners without any edits. And I did that. Among the people who requested that was Richard, Vegan Gains. He said that, obviously the other side. So the other guy was like, oh, no, like Eisel misrepresented me by using like little clips out of context. Like, no, I didn't. So I remember even Richard wanted to see the whole thing unedited and so on. Not that there was just one video in question. This guy had many, many videos. And his girlfriend / fiance of the time, she was also involved in this far right racist ideology. So, when I made videos really tackling those people, really confronting those people and exposing them for what they were, I can't describe this as, finding imperfections, neither with people nor with politics or ideas. These are major, serious, political challenges of our time. And now, not everybody can do what I do. I have to ask a question. If not you, then who? Like if I'm not going to do it, and with any of these, I'm sorry, was there someone else who was going to take on a natural vegan on the issue of antidepressants and brain damage being caused by antidepressants? Was there someone else who was going to take on Jacqueline Glenn and Mike the Vegan about the issue of marijuana and brain damage being caused by marijuana and the scientific evidence of it? And I know Mike the Vegan saw my critique because I heard back from him. I know Jacqueline Glenn heard my critique because I heard back from her, right? So I know that critique reached those people and reached thousands of other people in the audience. This is not finding a minor imperfection. So another example would be the ayahuasca um, fad. I have a very hard anti-drug position on all these issues, and I really went after and seriously criticized people who were glorifying and promoting the use of ayahuasca. So I'm not walking around some beautiful palace finding fault with the decorations, right? And here's the other thing. This is going to sound simple, but it's deep. um, it's shallow and it's deep at the same damn time, as I used to say. If your brother is a drunk, if your brother is descending further and further into alcoholism, for the sake of argument, let's presume you're both adults. You only see him every so often. You see him at Thanksgiving and no. You see him on certain kinds of holidays and occasions once every couple of months. You're going to be encouraging to your brother. You're going to be tolerant to your brother. Are you going to take the attitude that if your brother just keeps on drinking, if he keeps on going further down this spiral, doesn't hurt you, it doesn't hurt me, doesn't ruin my life? Why should I even be rude? Why should I ruffle any feathers? Why should I interrupt? Why should I stand up or get out of line? Right? If he drinks himself to death, if he ruins his life, if he squanders his intellectual potential, being a drunk, you know, okay. It's very easy to say it doesn't hurt me if you get drunk, if you're an alcoholic. And you know what? It's much harder to say it does hurt me. As the old song lyric goes, when things go wrong with you, don't you know it hurts me too. It's so much harder and it's so much realer to say to your brother, can't you see it's hurting me? Can't you see it's chewing me up inside? Can't you see how terrible I feel because you are an alcoholic? Because you're drinking this way? Because you're ruining your life? Now, it's not going to ruin my life. Your brain damage is not my brain damage. Your diarrhea is not my diarrhea. Your vomiting is not my vomiting. And your death is not my death. Of course, you know. Um, but, to say to someone, it breaks my heart to see you squandering your intellectual potential this way. It breaks my heart to see you taking everything good about this life and throwing it away and flushing it down the toilet for the sake of a jug of whiskey or whatever his poison may be. Now, what kind of person takes option A and what kind of person takes option B? A lot of us grow up with this false ideology of tolerance, that what you ought to do in relation to all these human vices is tolerate them. Oh, we can all get along, and your brother can go gambling every weekend and drink whiskey every Wednesday or whatever. Drinks vodka on Mondays and whiskey on Wednesdays, or whatever. Your brother can be a drunk and an alcoholic, and that you should just ignore it and smooth things over and get along with him and be kind and encouraging to everyone. Everyone should tolerate everyone else's vices, and together we can all go to hell in a handbasket. Like society can go to hell with nobody taking responsibility for anyone else, nobody caring about the consequences of anyone else's actions, you know, like as if I'm just going to paint my own side of the fence. And it doesn't matter if my brother is ruining the other side of the fence. Well, it's the same fence. And if my brother screws up the paint job, I'm going to have to do it again. I'm sorry, but it's the most obvious thing in the world. But I mean, the judgment is ultimately on what kind of person I'm going to be. I don't get to choose what kind of person my brother is going to be. Now, I think the type of person who embraces that fundamentally libertarian, fundamentally anarcho-capitalist view of the world, that you should just let people drink themselves to death, let people become drug addicts. I mean, really, that's bedrock for both libertarianism and anarcho-capitalism. They want to decriminalize heroin, cocaine, everything, and let everybody kill themselves. That it shouldn't matter to you anyway. Okay, well that's one type of person, and I'm telling you, that's not me. I care, and in a sense, I care because I don't think I'm that special. You know what I mean? I got a lot of brothers. Okay, one of my brothers is so severely mentally retarded that he's never spoken a word in any language. He never learned to speak English. He never learned to speak any language. I've studied a few languages, all right? So I do have one brother who's severely mentally disabled. But, if you're looking around at my brothers and sisters, you know, how much difference in intellectual potential is there between us? Like genetically or something, like in terms of how we were born. Well, I can tell you something, all of them, they might as well be retarded compared to me now because of how they live their lives, because of the consequences of the decisions they've made. Right? They're all older than me. I'm talking about guys 15 years older than me. They've had a lot more years to develop themselves. Okay. Now look, it's not my decision to make. I don't have to live with the consequence. I don't, right? The decision I can make is just whether or not I care. The decision I'm going to make is of my own attitude. And I'm saying, yeah, you're a better person if you can reach out to your brother and say, it hurts me so much to see you drinking this way. And you know what? I don't feel like a bad person when I reach out to a natural vegan and say, it hurts me so much to see you embracing pseudoscience this way. It hurts me so much. You're a science broadcaster or science education YouTuber, and you have in the past researched things and debunked things and taken risks, taken an edgy position on organic farming and about artificial sweeteners. And it really hurts me to see you doing the wrong thing. And the worst part of all is, one, I know you're giving yourself brain damage. Two, I know you're giving your unborn child brain damage. Now the child's born, but she's taking these drugs during pregnancy, doing harm to the fetus, doing harm to the embryo, whatever you want to say. And three, I know with an audience the size of our audience, this has consequences. There are going to be other women who embrace these excuses you're propounding, at least as certainly as promoting cigarettes, marijuana, drugs or alcohol, to say, look, it hurts me too. I'm affected. I care. You know, so what is that? Are you going to say that's a more compassionate person, a more concerned person? Look, what you can characterize this, in different ways, but I can't characterize it as someone who's walking around finding imperfections. I don't think that's what I'm doing in either a deep or a shallow level here. Now, look, um, when I reached out to Aaron Janis, when I reached out to Vegan Gains, Richard, and when I criticized them, all right, um, and Jacqueline Glenn, she's an example of this too. Part of what I'm saying to these people is, you have an amazing opportunity, and you're squandering it. You know, um, I think I've said that in those exact terms, publicly and privately, to all three of those people. You know, I mean, and you don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, maybe for Aaron, it's already over. Maybe for Richard, it's already over now too. But for some number of years, you had this amazing opportunity. And yeah, sure, it's an opportunity to get a certain message out to an audience. It's an opportunity as a creative artist. But of course, it's also an opportunity to become a better person instead of a worse one, right? Now, you can say I'm creating conflict or I'm escalating conflict. From my perspective, in all these cases, I'm acting with real concern. And let's be real. To my knowledge, all three of those people, they were really emotionally hurt by what I did. And Richard can do this tough guy act. I think it's fair to say that both Richard and his wife, they were really hurt by the critique I directed against them. And whatever. I mean, frankly, I mean, this is certainly non-falsifiable, because Richard, he pretends to be this tough guy. If he comes out and says on camera, no, that I it didn't hurt him in any way, I'm sorry, I wouldn't believe him. And whatever. I have the evidence I have before my eyes in terms of how they reacted to it. In as much as Richard is capable of feeling pain, I think it did. I think it really did hurt him, right? But I am asking a really important question that has really important consequences for him. And frankly, it's very close to being disappointed that your brother has become an alcoholic or your brother has become a gambler. It's like, look, Richard, you really could have done something great with this. I'll just mention to me, like, one example that I know I talked about with Richard directly back then. It's like, well, Richard, part of what you like to do is read these scientific publications. I can remember him even reading autopsies, kind of medical reports on particular. Part of what you like to do is analyze these statistics. I have some university education in that. He doesn't. But you don't really have the background or education in this. You could take this interest, you could develop it. I suggested different kinds of university courses he could take, whatever. But he could build on that interest in the health sciences, social science statistics. You could take that, you could move forward with it. Now, I'm being real with you. Sure, in some small part, that's about how you inform the audience, how you change the world, the future of the vegan movement. But for Richard, 99% of it, like from my perspective and why I'm saying that to him, is about 5 years from now, what kind of man are you going to be? Who are you going to become? Right? When I'm talking to Richard about not playing video games, which is something back when we were friends, I talked to him about, and now, of course, I've said it publicly and so on. Uh, and that's 0% about the audience. I don't care. It's not like he has to present an image of moral purity for his audience. It's 100% about what kind of person you're going to be 5 years from now. And let me ask you straight up, in any of those three cases, what if 5 years ago Jacqueline Glenn had followed my advice? What if 5 years ago Aaron Janis had followed my advice? What if 5 years ago Vegan Gains had followed my advice? These would all be really, really different people in a really profound and meaningful and important way. So, this stuff, it really is sincerely motivated. And it's not just trying to make the world a better place. And it's not trying to score points. It's not trying to create a conflict in a demonstrative way for the audience, a lot of it is really about actually trying to make that particular person, yeah, give them the opportunity to question the decisions they've made, the compromises they've made, and to become a better person, to start making the right decisions, start making different decisions. And yeah, so now the side of the equation that JMJ is correct about, this writer, this member of the audience writing it, what he's writing about is, it's certainly true that I do appreciate that you need a kind of jarring distantiation that most people are not really going to stop and reconsider their drinking habit without a fairly jarring distantiation where suddenly something happens where they stop and look in the mirror or reconsider. I've known so many people who drink alcohol, and if they're ever challenged on it in any kind, they'll just say, "Oh, well, I drink half as much as my boss at work. Oh, you think I drink a lot? You should see my brother Toby. He drinks more than that." They just have these relativistic justifications of, "Well, I know someone else. Oh, you think I gamble a lot? Oh, the other guy is down at this. I know guys who gamble twice as much." you know, I mean, it's so easy for people to relativize these things and justify them. And oh well, if you think I'm wasting my life by playing video games on the internet all the time and live streaming myself playing video games, and then they justify it by comparing it to someone else who's wasting their life even more. And yes, I do think that there's this very deep gulf in the world between people who are taking life seriously and people who never have. And just to get someone to stop and reconsider, how would I be living my life now if I took it seriously? So I'll digress just a really brief anecdote about this. I remember I once heard about a distant cousin of mine. Now I don't even know if I'm related to this guy by blood. Someone who's called a cousin of mine, but we're either barely related or not at all. It's just some kind of family connection through something. I don't, but distant. I've never met the guy. Never talked to the guy. And um, he attempted suicide. He threw himself out a window and ended up in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. So he survived falling out of a window, but he was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. That's the story as it was told to me. As I say, I never met the guy, and I just really thought about, if I were in a wheelchair, what would I do with the rest of my life? And you guys know video games were part of my childhood, part of my teenage years too. And it's just so clear. It's like, well, on the one hand, you can sink into self-pity. You can be an alcoholic in a wheelchair, you can drink, you can play video games, you can feel sorry for yourself. Or, you can just be completely resolute and self-disciplined and realize that the life of the mind, that what really matters in politics and philosophy and all these things, that's still there for you. The real work is there to be done on this. And I sat there and thought about that for a few minutes. And then, of course, I looked at the life I was living, like here and now, the life I was living at that time. And I realized how much worse the life I was living was compared to how I imagined myself living if I had an accident and was confined to a wheelchair for the rest of my life. It's like, wow, I'm not living up to the standards I would have for myself for being a good person or being an adequate if I were disabled and confined to a wheelchair. Like, you know, and you start, you have to be self-critical. You have to think, well, why am I so lazy? Or why am I, well, what, even you have to think, what are the excuses I'm making for myself that I didn't even realize I was making? You know, I talked to someone recently. I'm not going to say who this is, but I talked to someone recently who had a near-death experience. He was hospitalized and almost died. And I talked about some similar experiences I've had in my own life and talked about the difference between how you feel about it and how other people in your life feel about it. Because other people see you in a hospital bed and they attribute things to it. And maybe you don't feel that way about it, but the other people in your life feel, you know, um, you know, for most people who drink alcohol, the problem is invisible. They can't perceive the problem. To them, it's a non-problem. For most people who eat meat and drink milk and eat yogurt, it's a non-problem. They think veganism is the problem. They don't see They don't see their own diet or their own ethical choices and their consequences, as the problem. So I mean, it's certainly funny if you're willing to get involved in vegan politics, you are presumably already committed to getting involved with the politics of confronting people in a jarring and distantiating way about their own ethical choices, and specifically about ethical choices that they are blind to the significance of, that they are self-selectingly blind, that they choose to be ignorant to the consequences of. So now, vegan politics is only one. It's only one of many political irons I have in the fire. It's only one of many political, interests I have. Um, you know, but I mean, it's a very interesting sort of challenge here that JMJ presents to me. But what I feel like saying in reply is, why doesn't everyone else live this way? Why doesn't everyone else live the way I do? Why aren't you reaching out to your brother and saying, it hurts me so much to see you squandering your intellectual potential this way. All right. And why doesn't everyone who knows Richard, who knows Vegan Gains, reach out to him and say, it's basically the same thing. It hurts me so much to see you squandering your intellectual potential this way. Yeah, now you've got money, now you've got fame. I mean, he doesn't have to worry about paying his rent, so on, so on. And this is what you're doing with your life. You should have greater ambitions. And again, I'm being honest. For me, I can't say he must have ambitions to lead the vegan movement, or he must have ambitions to politically make a difference in Canada. And you guys might not have noticed this. I never say on my channel that you and you in the audience, you must have political ambitions to make Cambodia a better place, or Myanmar a better place, or Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan. I talk about politics from all around the world. I'm not going to say, I didn't say to Richard, look, Richard, you have to go to Syria and help refugees in the Syrian civil war. I don't say that, right? I mean, I do think on a bedrock level, on an inescapable level, your commitment really has to be to this idea of who you are going to be. Who are you going to be 5 years from now? Who are you going to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when you're 65 years old, when you're 75 years old? Now, I'm going to make the recklessly optimistic statement that once you're thinking that way, once you're really committed to being to that better person you could be, that's when it starts to become thinkable. Maybe you should care more about Syria. Maybe you should care more about Myanmar. Maybe you should care more about Cambodia or Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan, or like maybe your ambitions to make the world a better place. It starts to go far beyond your own alcoholic brother, who's just one alcoholic who happens to be your brother. Maybe you care about helping other people, in other ways also. So I want to come back to, it's already in the title of this video. The most fundamental leitmotif here is that there is this fissure, there's this deep divide or cleavage between people who take life seriously and people who don't. And I mean, so someone like Richard is a very strange example. Someone like Aaron Janis, a very strange example. When you talk about vegans and vegan activists and vegan personalities, you're talking about people who found one thing in life they take really seriously. James Aspey. James Aspey, he takes veganism really seriously. Everything else in life, apparently, he doesn't, Well, I take life seriously. Like, this matters to me. I can't say to you, it makes no difference to me if you're an alcoholic. I can't say I don't care just because that doesn't harm me. It does matter, you know? Um, when you take life seriously, if you see young people lying about the history of communism and converting other people to communism and building a new communist movement, whether it's in the United States of America or in Taiwan or in Europe or what have you. And you're in a position like myself, where you already have many years of research, many years of reading, many years of expertise, including the experience of living in communist countries. I have all kinds of ability to debunk that. You know, um, what would my attitude be? What would it say about me if I lived my life just being, well, I don't care, like as if the only point is for us to tolerate each other, as if it does me no harm and it's no concern of mine if you, and you should be communists, or indeed if high profile, famous, influential, and powerful people on YouTube and in the world should be dragging other people into a revival of communist ideology. Of course I care about that. Of course I should oppose it. And again, let me just ask, if not you, then who? I mean, if I'm not going to speak out against communism, if I'm not going to speak out against fascism, if I'm not going to speak out on First Nations politics, I have this history linking me to the study of Korean Ojibwe, Indigenous people in Canada, First Nations, American Indians, blah, blah, blah. You know, if I'm not going to do that, I can even ask people, are you going to stand up? Are you going to stick out your neck on those issues? Now, one of the examples here, this may seem trivial, but I think it illustrates this deepest divide, which isn't attached to any particular issue. It isn't attached to communism, and it isn't attached to alcohol versus sobriety. It isn't attached to misinformation about antidepressants versus the horrifying real science and so on. The example mentioned by JMJ is happy, healthy vegan, right? Okay. Why did I confront happy, healthy vegan in the way that I did? Sorry, am I getting his name? Ryan. Yeah, that's the channel name. I had, I think, just one debate with a communist on my YouTube channel. If there have been a second or third, they weren't that memorable. I've talked to others online, but of course, it hurts me to hear someone, to meet someone who's throwing their life away, who's ruining their life for this religion, this ideology that might as well be religion, this set of political beliefs. But it's specifically a political ideology that ruined my own father's life. Okay? Now, whatever my father could have been, he wasn't because of communism. All right, let's put it that way. And I mean, my father would never be able to be honest with you about any of this stuff. There was a stage at which my father was an aspiring actor in a Shakespearean festival. Okay? There was a stage at which my father applied for and received a scholarship to study Hinduism. Okay, study Hindu philosophy, not communist philosophy, not Marxism. Now there was not a lot good about my father. He's a terrible person. Already in that period, I could tell you terrible things about him, terrible things he did that had terrible consequences. A lot of bad things about my father. But whatever positive potential he had to do good in the world, it was snuffed out. You could say by his being seduced by communism or his commitment to communism, but really it is like a religious conversion for him. And he tried to raise me as his son. He tried to raise me in the same religion that he had become committed to himself. What kind of person would I be if I just stumbled through life and tolerated, in this sense, other people becoming victims of this same ideology, other people converting to this religion, when I know the harm it does, and I really know and understand, the ideology itself. I understand it from the inside and from the outside. I understand it from many different angles. But like, I even understand emotionally what people find compelling about it, not just the dry textbook facts of history or something. There are a lot of different angles I have. Okay. Why wouldn't I be concerned? Why wouldn't I care? Even if you're not my brother, even if you're a complete stranger on the internet. Now, I can't care about everyone. There are limits to how much you can care, and that's a subject for another video. And again, if not you, then who? If you're taking life seriously, you really care about the future of the vegan movement, and you know and understand what I know about the future of the vegan movement, isn't there a similar kind of motivation in intervening and confronting people when you see them doing the wrong thing and taking the wrong path in the vegan movement? And when you even know they have good intentions. You know they have good intentions, but to some extent they're ruining their own lives. To some extent, they're ruining the movement. And you want to there are many examples of that. Sure, Ryan from Happy Healthy Vegan, I'm mentioning here because it's partly applicable to that case. I think a great example is my confrontation with Cranky Vegan. So if you guys don't know who Cranky Vegan is, that guy, I really had to say to him, look, you don't seem to hear the words that are coming out of your own mouth, but this is what you're saying in these videos. This is going to have consequences for people. It's going to have consequences for individual people. It's going to have consequences for individual people and their individual lives, going to jail, and it's also going to have consequences for the movement and it's consequence for you, but that's a very pure example where it's about the future of the movement. And none of you may believe me, but my conflict with Nina and Randa, was legitimately about contesting the future of the vegan movement. And I know Nina and Randa, they think they only have good intentions. I mean, still to this day, they think they've done nothing wrong, or they keep up the pretense, you know. But no, I really had something important to say. And I know it got to them because they responded to it. And I know it got to Klaus. Klaus was there from Plant Based News. I know it got to Vegan Cheetah also. It was pointing the finger at those 5 people or something, saying, look, you know, you may not think you're doing something here that's bad and evil and wrong, but I'm going to really explain to you what's going on in the movement. And I'm sorry, guys, you can look back at the last 8 years. I wish I could sit here and tell you that I was wrong. I wish I could sit here and tell you that when you look back, my critique of Gary Yourofsky, my critique of Gary Francione, my critique of Nina Aranda, my critique of any of these people, I was really setting out the right warnings at the right time. And in any of those cases, even someone like Gary Yourofsky, what if 5 years ago, Gary Yourofsky had listened to and taken my advice? How different would his life be? How different would the whole vegan movement be? James Aspey, what if 5 years ago he'd listened to my critique and, any of these people, down to and including Joey Carbstrong or something, like the advice I gave, it was really needed. It was really necessary. It could really change the path these people were taking in life. And then the knock-on effects they've had for all the people they've influenced and the harm they've done to the movement. And then again, what the movement could have been, but sure, in the same way that I can say, we'll never know the man my father could have become if he didn't become the victim of an evil ideology. And to be fair, if he didn't become himself an evil ideologue, because he did harm to others. I mean, he wasn't a passive victim. He, he was himself. He was himself one of the people using this ideology to harm others. Let's put it that way. Well, you can say the same thing about what happened within veganism in the last 8 years. Yes, that's simplifying a complicated story, but it's still a reasonable simplification. So wouldn't you feel motivated to intervene and make that change if you have that background? And in terms of the conflict with Ryan specifically, with Happy Healthy Vegan, do you have any idea what depth of expertise and experience I have with Buddhism? It's a legitimate question. In terms of both how much I know and the scarcity of that knowledge, the number of white people who speak English who have ever known more about Buddhism than me in the history of the world. Like, you're talking about Theravada Buddhism, Orthodox, Pali Canon, Theravada Buddhism. I wish I could tell you there were just tons of people you could talk to about this stuff. But one, there were incredibly few people who did the work, who did the research. And two, most of them are insane. And not a little bit insane, not slightly eccentric. So, I'm someone who actually has sane, rational, skeptical attitudes and who's done the research and studied the languages and lived in those countries. Now, okay, so if you have, again, these are just parallels. If you have my background and my understanding about antidepressant drugs, what are you going to do about it? Don't you feel there's an onus on you? Don't I feel pressure? Sorry, I said, don't I feel pressure? But let me just tell you positively, I feel pressure to take what I know about antidepressant drugs and go out and change the world and go out and challenge the inertia and indifference and ignorance of the society and culture I'm living in. I don't know what to do with that. It's a burden on me that I live with. I feel an onus on me. I feel a burden on me because of what I know about communism. To go out and debunk communism, to go out and challenge the evolving and expanding culture of communism in our times. I feel motivated to go out and try to make the difference that I can make. In some cases, it's the difference that I alone can make. In some cases, the difference where there are a few other people in the world, but apparently none of them are motivated. Like, I don't have competition in any of these fields of human endeavor. And sure, it's very strange for me to be sitting there and talking about Buddhism with someone like Ryan from Happy Healthy Vegan. And if you know what I know about Buddhism and you take life seriously, how do you feel when you see Sam Harris, a leader in the atheist movement, peddling and promoting Buddhist meditation, peddling and promoting specific forms of Buddhism bad things about, the dirt about. I know things about Buddhism, not just generally, but specifically, the specific speakers Sam Harris is having and the specific lies Sam Harris himself is telling, or that he and his guest doing the interview are telling. I know the harm it does in the same way that I know the danger of communism. And in the same way, I think it's fair to say now, looking back at the last 5 years, looking back at the last 8 years, it's fair to say that I knew the harm of what was going on in the vegan movement, of what was going wrong with veganism, and of the tremendous positive opportunities that were squandered. Like, tragically, I thought I knew that. Tragically, I was right. So he says, just going to read this and wrap it up. Quote, but then there would be conflicts with mod vegan gains, and over the years, numerous non vegans as well. Now I can see it as a conscious strategy on your part to challenge people's beliefs, to get them out of their comfort zone, perhaps to make them change their minds by escalating a conflict. I feel like there's a kind of objective reality to what he's saying there. Like, it's objectively true from his perspective, sitting out in the audience. And yet, for me, subjectively, it's totally untrue. I tried so hard to get along with Richard, Vegan Gains. I tried so hard to get along with Margaret, Mod Vegan. Do you think lying about cocaine and heroin and what's now the fentanyl drug addiction epidemic running out of control, the specific lies she was telling about drugs? And I know she was also committed to that kind of position on antidepressants. I mean, it's not surprising if you're willing to tell those lies in favor of cocaine, you're going to tell them how much easier to tell them in favor of antidepressants. I tried so hard to work with these people, not against them. And of course, Aaron Janis is an example. I tried so hard to get along with Aaron Janis. I tried so hard to get along with Henya Mania. I tried so hard to cooperate with people and to see the good in them. And Mod Vegan had sent me a long series of completely insane, completely dishonest, completely despicable statements in writing related to the drug addiction issue, hard drug issue, whatever you want to say. And I invited her to come on the podcast and have a discussion about it. To say it was in good faith is an understatement. I really wanted to assume the best about her. I knew, okay, this is what she did her master's degree research on. I wanted that to be a positive, cooperative, collaborative discussion. Like, that really was my perspective. So I'm just saying, like you're saying, this is an intentional strategy. And I think like it's totally fair for someone in the audience to sit there, and you can watch that live stream I did with Mod Vegan. You can sit there and watch that, and you could objectively say, oh, well, this is Eisel intentionally escalating the conflict and so on. And I've got to tell you, for me, living through the first person, not at all. Not at all. It's me. I went into that really genuinely. And even during that conversation, I feel I'm de-escalating the conflict and I'm letting her get away with things that are flagrantly false and dishonest and what have you. And, you know, and from my perspective, I've been trying to be kind and encouraging and see the best in people. And for so many years, I was trying to build a movement while recognizing that each person was an eccentric with, mutually irreconcilable values, separating them from every other eccentric who had some potential to contribute something positive, whether that was to the future of the vegan movement or the future of the atheist movement or the future of the democracy movement. If I can think of myself as being now an activist for direct democracy, or for some kind of return to what it was they managed to get right in ancient Greece and Rome, which I do as I get older now. I now think of myself more and more as an activist in that sense. I cannot say a classicist because that word has other meanings and connotations and denotations. But yeah, I'd be very interested in working with people who share that kind of interest, that kind of vision of the past, and that kind of vision of the future. Deepening and making democracy meaningful. I'm tempted to say making democracy great again, but but no, it really is. It really is a vision of the future, and not about glorifying the past. Okay, guys. So he closes his comment by saying, it's a conscious strategy on my part, and that therefore, quote, so I'm quoting him. He says, quote, I guess it's fair to say that wherever you go, you find imperfections. You aren't, it shows that you have a strong character. And he says, you aren't the meek type of person to compromise and pretend just to get along. So, therefore, it's a lifetime of disagreement and conflict for you, right? Well, let me ask you in the audience this question. If you were living in Saudi Arabia, how much conflict would you have with the culture you happen to be living in, you happen to be situated in, where you happen to be born into? If in a different life you were born in Saudi Arabia, if in a different life you were born in Istanbul, Turkey, very interesting example right now because it's sort of teetering on the edge. It's not as bad as Saudi Arabia yet, but it's gotten worse and worse within my lifetime, you know. Or perhaps, to be fair, or perhaps, yeah, I mean, sorry, even that I hesitate to say because it was really bad in the past of my lifetime. But anyway, maybe we should just say it has become more and more obvious how terrible the situation in Turkey is. I'm more comfortable with that than actually saying it's gotten worse. I think things really were bad before, but we had reasons to kid ourselves about it. We had reasons to have kind of false optimism. Okay, so if you were living in Turkey now and you spoke Turkish fluently, how are you going to live your life as a dissident and as a dissident intellectual? What I have to say to you is that I'm not seeking out a life of conflict. And I've just narrated for you. I'm not even really seeking out a conflict with someone like a natural vegan. I'm really not. Okay. But I am more alienated from my own society. And I am more alienated from the other members of the vegan movement. You know, I am more alienated from each of these social contexts. Certainly, I am more alienated from the other YouTubers who talk about atheism and call themselves activists for the atheist movement. I am more alienated from Jacqueline Glenn from The Amazing Atheist, right? I am more alienated from my own culture than you would be from the culture of 21st century Turkey. So I have to, in this way, live my life in a perpetual state of conflict, whether I bring that to others or others bring it to me. I don't have a choice. But the choice I do have is whether the conflict in my life is going to be meaningful or meaningless. And I can look at a conflict like a conflict about the future of psychiatry, the future of prescription drugs for depression, you know, and I can say, yes, this is a conflict worth having. There's something to win and there's something to lose, and I can commit my time and energy to it, and I can care about the outcomes of that conflict, whether it's with one person or with 1,000. Whether it's for one person's life, it's to save one person's life, and that's not an exaggeration. And without getting into personal details about people I've known and the consequences, whether or not it's to save just one person's life or it's to lead the audience through a kind of political exercise that's going to impact 100 people's lives, 1,000 people's lives, 10,000 people's lives, and so on. I can say, yes, 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 clearly, this is a meaningful conflict. I think it's harder to commit to the notion that just reaching out to your own brother and letting him know when things go wrong with you, it hurts me too. Don't say it's none of my business. Don't say it doesn't harm me, that I don't suffer when you get drunk and you go gambling. All right? It hurts me. It hurts me more than you know. It hurts me because I care. To find the meaning in that and to commit to that as a meaningful conflict. I think that is a test of character. Each of you have to examine in your own hearts whether or not you've got what it takes. And when you've examined that, maybe you can look again a little more charitably at the type of conflict I had with Richard, with Vegan Gains, the type of conflict I had with Mod Vegan, at the type of conflict I had with Aaron Janice. And even if it hurt those people, even if Jacqueline Glenn broke down weeping in response to it, even if Unnatural Vegan felt betrayed and hurt and shed her tears over the criticism I brought to her channel. Okay. It is fundamentally about that same spirit, that same test of character. Um, it's meaningful and it matters to me because I care. And I care that you are squandering your intellectual potential. And when you scale that up, it means that we are squandering our political potential.